All right, you know what this is about. I know what this is about. Let's get this show on the road. Union Pacific's Big Boy, the largest steam locomotive ever built, sorta. This massive machine was built to tackle the Wasatch Mountains of Utah and Wyoming in the 1940s. 25 of these big giant locomotives were constructed, 8 are still around, and only one is in steam to tell its tale, Union Pacific 4014. Restored to operation in 2019 by the Union Pacific steam crew, this big boy is no longer a massive freight hauler over the mountains, but instead a massive rolling PR machine for the UP. In 2026, it was announced the engine would make its way east of Chicago for the first time since it was built in 1941 to celebrate America's 250th anniversary. This tour would take the train through the state of Ohio on the former nickel plate from state line to state line. Of course, I wasn't going to miss seeing Big Boy in my home state for the world, and I made sure I'd catch as much of this eastbound run as I could. It's Saturday, June the 6th, 2026, and Big Boy is about to make her first trek into Ohio. She'll be leaving Fort Wayne, Indiana, with the end destination for the day of Belleview, Ohio. My dad, my little brother, and I decided to drive up and intercept him in Oakwood, Ohio, a few miles outside of Continental, Ohio, which would be her first port of call for today, where she'd be having a 30-minute whistle stop. As the crowds gathered in this small town, Big Boy's whistle could be heard over the horizon, and soon clouds of steam could be seen as well. And pretty soon, Big Boy was making her presence known in this tiny town, as she steamed towards Continental and her first whistle stop of the day. As this massive machine rolled right in front of me, my jaw was practically on the floor. It was an amazing sight. I was in pure stupor. I've seen big boys at museums before, but nothing compares to seeing the real deal in action on the main line. 4014 was, of course, leading the train. Behind her were 2 auxiliary tenders, and behind those were the 2 diesel helpers. Norfolk Southern 1776, the Bell, and Union Pacific 1776. Both of these are special locomotives to commemorate America's 250th, but if you ask me, I think Norfolk Southern did a little better here. Behind that was a large string of Union Pacific OCS cars, and then a small cut of Norfolk Southern OCS cars. After the train cleared Oakwood, we get in the car and make our way east, using the stop in Continental as a jumping off point to help us get ahead of the train a little more. After catching her in Oakwood, we made our way east and decided to stop in Continental to try and get some up-close shots of her at her whistle stop. Now, for anyone who's considering going to whistle stop on her westbound run later this year, word of advice from me, don't do them. The whistle stops are crowded, packed, there's hordes, swarms of people. It's a whole mess, and you can't really get that close to Big Boy anyway. If you want to get close to Big Boy, go find one of the ones preserved at a museum. If you want my recommendation, just go somewhere on the main line and catch her in action. But nevertheless, I did stop here, and I got to see her at least a little bit before we headed off to our next spot. After leaving Continental, we made our way to Ruse Airport, a small airstrip just outside of Leipzig, Ohio. As Big Boy rolled her way east, an airplane came in to land, and pretty soon we saw Big Boy crossing over the Great Plains of West Ohio, in a scene quite reminiscent of her home state of Wyoming. As mentioned before, the lush green fields and wide open skies were very reminiscent of the states of Wyoming and Nebraska, which Big Boy once called home in her working career. It was very cool to see a shot like this, and I'm very happy I got it. It also reminds me of some of my old trains videos, if any of you guys remember that. As Big Boy made her way east, we broke off for lunch, some gas, and a potty break before catching up with Big Boy again outside of Maple Grove, Ohio. Here, the Nickel Plate Road crosses over the former Pennsylvania Railroad's branch line from Tiffin to Toledo, Ohio. This line is now owned by the Northern Ohio and Western Short Line Railroad. They won't be running any trains today, so Big Boy had the right-of-way over the diamond. After missing Big Boy pound the diamonds at the Iron Triangle in Fostoria, it was cool to see such a massive machine pound the diamonds here, albeit at a much smaller scale. Here she is rolling at track speed through downtown. As Big Boy thundered her way east, this would be the end of our chase for today. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I got to see it, especially here at track speed. The next day, Big Boy would be out of action, on display in Belleview, Ohio for a private event for Norfolk Southern employees. I'd spend the day making my way east, towards the Cleveland area, in preparation for Monday. But there would be a handful of stops along the way. Day 2 of the trip would not revolve around Big Boy. She was in Bellevue, Ohio for the day and out of the public eye. So I'd make my way east, very slowly, making quite a few stops. My first one was in Fostoria, Ohio, where 3 major rail lines cross each other at a spot known as the Iron Triangle. I didn't stay around here for too long, but I saw a few trains, such as this, Norfolk Southern 35N with a Canadian National leader crossing the diamonds. 35N is daily manifest freight traffic out of Wick-Mormon Yard in Bellevue, Ohio, bound for the Terminal Railroad Association in Madison, Illinois, just outside of St. Louis. The previous day, Fostoria had drawn in a crowd of thousands to see Big Boy, as she thundered down this exact same right-of-way. Today, there were probably only about a dozen. I didn't stick around here for too long, as there were other things and other places I wanted to see, and I'd done Fostoria before. But I stuck around for one more train. This was CSX I-103, intermodal out of South Kearney Yard in New Jersey, bound for Chicago, Illinois. After this train, I'd make my way east to Belleview, Ohio, where Big Boy was stored for the day. She'd be out of the public eye, but there was plenty in Bellevue itself to keep me occupied. I visited the Mad River and Nickel Plate Road Railroad Museum, the largest railroad museum in Ohio, and an absolutely great visit, with a lot of cool relics of railroads past. Also in Bellevue is Kemper Rail Park, located on the diamond of Norfolk Southern's Sandusky District and Norfolk Southern's Toledo District. Bellevue sees around 120 trains a day, and I was treated to quite a few here today. If I showcased them all, I'd make the video thrice as long, so I'll only show the highlights. Here's inbound train NS 380 from Chicago coming into Bellevue Yard, with a BNSF leader on point. All the trains that came through Bellevue today were almost just like this. Large mixed manifests coming in and out of Bellevue Yard, many of which would take multiple minutes to pass through completely. There were quite a few just like this, but the highlight was certainly NS 334, coming out of Wick-Norman Yard, bound for Detroit, Michigan, with NS 8099, the Southern Railway Heritage Unit, on point. On any other Railfan trip, a Heritage Unit would definitely be one of the highlights. But considering the competition is the literal Big Boy, I don't think this Gevo in special paint will come anywhere close to that. But considering Big Boy was out of the picture today, it was a welcome sight nonetheless. I'd stick around for a couple more trains here, including this, NS 178 pulling into the yard, just as another train was pulling out of the yard. A zipper meet is always something cool to see. NS 178 is daily manifest out of Irondale, Alabama, bound for Bellevue, Ohio. The one on the Toledo district in the background is NS 332, bound for Toledo. After this train cleared, I would make my way east out of town. I'd briefly stop by Wick-Norman Yard to see if I could catch a glimpse of the Big Boy, and I could, albeit it was quite a small one. I then continued further east to Heartland Yard on the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad, as I was told that the Wheeling's tunnel motors were in town. Rio Grande Twins 5413 and 5412 both still wear original Rio Grande paint. Working the yard was another train, I believe train 221 coming in from Brewster, Ohio, with 4 identical Tigers switching some cars. This wheeling train would be the last train of the day for me as I continued my way east to where I'd be staying for the week and get some nice, well-deserved rest. The following morning, I'd be up and at 'em again, chasing the big boy. Now Monday, June the 8th of 2026, and Big Boy's preparing to make her next run. Running the leg from Bellevue, Ohio to Conneaut, Ohio, through the heart of downtown Cleveland. I'd catch up with Big Boy on the outskirts of Milan, Ohio, at an overpass where the railroad tracks cross over Mason Road. Despite being a middle-of-the-nowhere area, there was quite a large crowd here gathered to see Big Boy 4014 trundling her way through Ohio's heartland. As I mentioned before, the crowds here were pretty insane, considering this was the middle of nowhere, and that would be the theme of today. The crowds were much larger and traffic was a lot worse today than it was on Saturday. This was partly because we'd be in more of an urban environment this time, as opposed to rural western Ohio. However, the show must go on, and I soon chased Big Boy to my next spot, just outside of Vermilion, Ohio, right along Lake Erie. Big Boy was getting her first taste of the Lake Erie air as she chuffed her way out of Vermilion, Ohio, towards Lorain. She's crossing over Beaver Creek, a small creek that houses the Beaver Park Marina. As Big Boy rolled her way into downtown Lorain, I used her 15-minute whistle stop in town to get ahead of her. I caught her again on the east side of town, where a small crowd had gathered, and, well, let's just say these guys were winning the Darwin Awards. Remember to stand at least 25 feet back at all times, folks. Anyway, here comes Big Boy roaring her way out of Lorraine, bound for points east. Now, there have been instances all across the Big Boy's East Coast tour that have had situations like this. People getting too close to the train and playing a dangerous game of chicken. This dude in the red hat, I think, was the worst offender here in Lorraine, and his daughter on the other side was climbing on top of the train tracks only a few seconds before Big Boy got here. It was a mess, folks, and if we want to make sure Big Boy comes back east again, let's try and be a little safer around trains. Getting out of Lorraine would prove to be very difficult, as traffic getting out of town was awful. The urban roads, packed with the hundreds of people, were not exactly ideal. Thankfully, I was able to get ahead of Big Boy and make it to downtown Cleveland, Ohio, specifically the Flats, at the big nickel plate trestle where the Big Boy crosses the Cuyahoga River and the industrial heartland of central Cleveland. Getting the train crossing this bridge would be a once-in-a-lifetime shot, and I wanted to make sure I get it. Thankfully, I got here just in time, as Big Boy had to do an inspection down the line, which bought me a little extra time. If that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have made it. But anyway, here's Big Boy crossing the incredible nickel plate trestle, rolling into Cleveland for the first time. Now this was the coolest part of the whole trip. Having this massive steam locomotive roll right on top of my head was absolutely incredible. And the steam blast from the locomotive, bringing down a nice cool mist on us, was well welcome on this hot summer's day. I wouldn't stay and record the full train as I wanted to get to Euclid, beat the traffic. I wanted to meet a friend there, check out the whistle stop with him, but traffic did not work in either of our favors, so we decided to meet up in Willoughby, Ohio, just outside of Euclid, to see Big Boy passing its speed. Unfortunately, it would appear that everyone else had the same idea we did. There had to have been at least 100 people at this tiny grade crossing. Nevertheless, we set up camp and waited out for Big Boy. Soon enough, she came through, traveling at track speed. I ended my day here in Willoughby, deciding not to chase it any further, satisfied with what I had worked with already. I went home and got more rest, preparing for the next day, which would require one more stop to see Big Boy. My last day with Big Boy would be one of my shortest, but one of my most memorable. I woke up early and made my way to Conneaut, Ohio, where Big Boy had overnighted. We're on the east side of town, at the Norfolk Southern Bridge over the Conneaut Creek and the Bessemer and Lake Erie Railroad. My original plan was to get closer to the bridge and get a cool shot of Big Boy crossing the large span. However, local police forced me back a little closer to the road, and for good reason, as something pretty amazing happened.
Cars steady.
Yeah, I know. I can't help being this cool. Talk about right place, right time. Big Boy stopped right in front of me as a few crew members got out to switch the track in front of it. It was pretty incredible to see this locomotive up close, quite literally right in front of me. And boy howdy, I took advantage of it, getting as many videos and pictures as I could. Pretty soon, my moment of bliss ended as Big Boy had to continue east. She started up and began moving ever so slowly, getting me a really nice shot of 1,000,000 pounds of steel beginning its push to 60 miles an hour. It was super cool and something I'll probably never get to see again. Unfortunately, this is where the 4014 and I parted ways, as she continued east and I continued home. I practically chased this thing state line to state line, and I'm glad I did. It was a super fun experience and something I won't forget. I hope she makes another trip out east sometime soon, but until then, I hope she has a safe trip back west. And for anyone going to see her on her westbound run, I wish you the best of luck. After Big Boy cleared out of town, I decided to float around the Conneaut area and see what other train stuff was nearby. I knew there was a Bessemer and Lake Erie train building in Conneaut Yard, so I wanted to stick around at least for that. In the meantime, I went up to the Conneaut Railroad Historical Society Museum, which unfortunately was closed today, but I was able to get pictures of their nickel plate Berkshire number 755 from behind her jail cell bars. This museum lies right next door to New York Central's famous water level route, now owned by CSX, and sees quite a few trains a day. I was able to catch two coming eastbound through here. First was I-104, intermodal traffic out of Bedford Park, Illinois, bound for South Kearney, New Jersey, with 3 GEs on point. What a cruel fate this must be, having to watch every other train roll by at 60 miles an hour while you're stuck on a small piece of track and can't go anywhere. Poor 755. Unfortunately, her pain would not end today as another train came up. Here comes CSX M428, manifest traffic out of Detroit, Michigan, bound for Selkirk, New York, passing the mountain-stuffed nickel plate Berk. After this train cleared, traffic on the CSX virtually went to zero. I decided to head back to the Bessemer and Lake Erie Railroad to wait on that BNLE train leaving Conneaut Yard. Today, the Bessemer is owned by Canadian National. Odd because the Canadian National has no rail interchange with the BNLE, meaning the Bessemer is entirely isolated from the rest of the CN system. I waited about an hour or two here at this really scenic location for the outbound train, and here it comes, U-702, ore loads out of Conneaut, Ohio, bound for North Bessemer, Pennsylvania. Finally getting out here to catch the Bessemer has been on my bucket list for a while, and I'm glad I got to scratch it off today. The train was being sandwiched by two sets of SD70M-2s, one on the front and one on the rear. Not the most unique power, but something pretty cool nonetheless. This will unfortunately be my last train of the day, and it was a pretty good one to end up. Not as cool as Big Boy, but still pretty cool. Overall, I'm glad I got to take this trip, and I'm glad I got to see the largest steam locomotive in the world. Thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.